Hi, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, and we are currently live in the breakout room. So, welcome and welcome, and we love being here for you with quality and value to inspire and to transform. Remember, we are on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and iTunes. Today, as usual, we have a special guest to share with you for your development and growth and to live your better informed life. So, grab a cup, pull up a seat, and stay tuned for the introduction. Right here, now, live in the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Andy Charles, and we are currently live in the breakout room on Andy's Personal Development. I am your award winning and internationally accredited life and development coach. So stay tuned. Now, this is your introduction.
Our next guest in the breakout room is author Jason Boyce. His book is entitled Chronic Fatigue Gone, a recovery plan for COVID long haul, ME, CFS, LYME, and fibromyalgia. Having suffered from ME, CFS for 15 years, then long COVID, Jason Boyce finally had enough. In his new book, Chronic Fatigue Gone, he chronicles his experiences experimenting with a number of therapies, pharmaceuticals, and vitamins. He's also the principal at Jason Boyce Real Estate. This is the man of the moment. He says about his book, I believe this is the first book ever to provide information on a huge range of potential remedies, both natural and pharmacological, to help remedy all the symptoms of long COVID, ME, CFS, LYME, and fibromyalgia. So, let's welcome live in the breakout room the man with the book of healing, Jason Boyce.
And we are live in the breakout room, folks. And in the house is the man, Jason Boyce. And we're going to have a conversation with him. We hope that it will add value and inspiration to your life. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm very well, thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having
Great.
me on.
Thanks for enjoying the moment and for agreeing to come on the show with us. We are indeed happy to have you, and we know that the information that you're going to share is current and something that a lot of people would be interested in terms of health and sustaining themselves against chronic fatigue and all the other associated ailments that comes along with COVID and long COVID. So indeed, it's a pleasure to have you here, Jason. So as we begin the conversation, Jason, as we were chatting earlier back screen, what I'd like for you to share with us is the early stages of Jason Boyce. If you can recall your childhood days growing up and what sort of inspiration or experience you had that created the opportunity for you to achieve what you have accomplished today.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably tell from the accent, I grew up in England. So I
Yeah.
grew up in Birmingham, England, which is the second largest city. So I had a pretty normal childhood. I had really great parents that supported me, and I had a pretty regular type of education. Um, all my troubles really started when I went to college, or sort of the tail end of college. I was training to become a real estate consultant, commercial real estate consultant.
Right.
And I moved to London in my early 20s and got a job in the city of London. And of course, I was working really hard. I was commuting for an hour and 30 minutes each way, working long hours. And like many people, I got a cold, or what I believed to be was the flu, basically. And I was off work for about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And working really hard, and I thought, well, okay, it's the flu, I'll get over it. And I thought I had gotten over it, but looking back now, I realize I never got over it, ever.
Wow.
I never quite had the energy that I had before that virus. And every day I'd go to work and I would fade by 2 or 3 o'clock, and I'd just have to go home at 4, and my career started to suffer. So I went to see different types of doctors. At the time, you may recall something called the yuppie flu, which was all the rage in like the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I went to see a doctor, and he said, well, you've got what we call the yuppie flu, which we think is some kind of virus that doesn't go away, and tough luck, you're just going to have to deal with it. And there's a real stigma around that at the time. It was kind of, seen like young professionals work too hard, and then they get this flu, and it's an excuse to have an extended vacation, right?
Yeah.
And but for me, it never went away. So I went through my 20s and into my 30s just feeling tired 100% of the time. So I went to see more doctors, and then every doctor I saw said, well, you're just depressed, here's some antidepressants, please go away, come back in a couple of months and tell me how you feel. But of course, depression isn't caused by a virus, and you can't cure chronic fatigue by curing depression.
Right.
So it was pretty frustrating for not just me, but other people like me, because millions of people had this problem of chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
And chronic fatigue syndrome then came pretty much a stigma attached to that, because nobody wanted to admit they had it. And then doctors wouldn't even believe it was a thing at all. So had a really tough time just getting any kind of treatment. Recently, chronic fatigue syndrome has been called ME, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is it's actually inflammation of the brain and spinal cord coupled with muscle pain.
Right.
And that's kind of legitimized it as a disease. So now people say they have ME and not CFS. But what it is essentially is a post-viral malaise problem. It's an autoimmune problem, which is caused by a very nasty virus, which never really goes away and stays in the system, and then it just reactivates the immune system over and over and over again. So you're constantly trying to battle this virus. Well, in fact, the virus may not even be there, but your immune system believes it's there.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly fighting the virus.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, over the years, it wears you down, and you do get depressed, because who can live with being tired all the time? It's really difficult to be just stay mentally, healthy, I guess.
Yeah.
So I took the doctor's advice, I started taking antidepressants, started getting better mentally, and I went to see a chronic fatigue specialist. Now, they exist now. They didn't exist in the 90s.
Yeah.
But now they do exist.
Right. Yeah.
So people who have chronic fatigue syndrome should go and see a specialist, because it's very helpful. And he gave me some ideas of how to get better, but he was pretty defeatist. He basically said, look, you got to rest. I actually asked him how long he thinks I'll live, and he said 58 was the average age of life, and I thought, wow, that's, I'm 51 now, that's no good. I've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I decided to try everything. I just go experimental. I try all different combination of therapies, different types of drugs, different types of vitamins, combine them. I wrote all the results down in a journal over like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And tried to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And then it was like about 2.5 years ago, I realized I had this really great sort of amount of information that could help a lot of other people, get better, like I've gotten better over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, why didn't I share this information? And that's where the seeds of the book came, because I had all the information there. I just had to collate it in a readable format, which I believe could help other people, because I read a lot of books about chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, and they were great. They sort of explained why you had it and what the why the immune system reacted as it does, and what chronic inflammation is, which provides the symptoms of this awful disease.
Yeah.
But they never gave any serious, really useful therapeutic advice on how to beat fatigue. So I just thought, well, what I need to do this. I need to, I need to write a book that's going to help people get over this. So, so that's what I did. So I wrote the book, and I came up with a whole plan to, actually beat chronic fatigue syndrome. And when I was writing the book, of course, COVID happened. And unfortunately, I had to, I had to stop writing the book and figure out what COVID was, and do I incorporate this into the book? Because the symptoms of COVID were very similar to the symptoms of ME, stroke chronic fatigue syndrome. So that's what I did. And just as I was finishing writing the book, long COVID became a thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people I knew had long COVID, and then I believe that I got long COVID myself after a bout of COVID, and I incorporated that into the book. Are you still there, Andy? I think I might have lost you.
Dictated for you, something that you were not happy with.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he said I was going to die young, and and there's nothing he could do for me, and that I just had to rest.
Yeah.
So the choices were: do I sit in my bedroom and wait to die the next 8 years, or do I do something about it? So I decided to, write this journal, try everything that I could try that I knew was available, try the different combinations to see if they worked. And I tried some slightly controversial things as well. And I logged everything and then wrote the book, based on everything that I found out that could help me. And that's what I did. So I decided to share that with other people. I was fortunate in my journey that when I was working in London, working hard and then starting to fall ill, we moved to the United States because my wife got a job in New Jersey. So we moved to the States, and then I could work from home, doing real estate, mainly real estate development.
Right.
And so I could work as many or as a few hours as I wanted to, and having the limited hours or limited energy, the rest of the time I could just work on trying to get better. And that's how I had the time to write the book.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was I've got the whole book is basically split into two parts. The first part are the triggers of chronic fatigue, and it's not just viruses. The main virus for people like me who got chronic fatigue before COVID was EBV, which is Epstein-Barr virus. It's a very common virus, but some people react to it differently. And I was one of those people who reacted to it, unfortunately.
Okay.
But there's a whole host of other triggers that can cause chronic fatigue. And I'm not going to get into that because I want to deal with the more important end of fatigue, which is actually getting over it and curing chronic fatigue, for want of a better word.
Right.
So the first chapter in the book, I'm going back to depression here because depression, it's very hard to get better if you're depressed. And this goes for anybody who's got long COVID. If you're depressed, you need to get over that. You need to deal with the depression. So one therapeutic that I tried, which was somewhat controversial, but worked 100% effective for me, was ketamine therapy. And the ketamine is a psychoactive drug. If you think of LSD as, a mind-altering drug, ketamine, it doesn't react the same as LSD. It's a very different type of experience. But ketamine has been used as a anesthetic for many, many years, and it's still used today as an anesthetic in different places around the world. But in low doses, it changes the brain chemistry. It floods the brain with a chemical called glutamate. What glutamate does, if you can imagine your brain as a network of roads, and when you get depression, you get all these different potholes in the roads. Well, glutamate smooths over the potholes and fills them in. So one session of ketamine therapy can actually reverse very serious depression. and it only takes 40 minutes IV infusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically used for people who are suicidal
Mm-hmm.
and who are in danger of imminent suicide. And what ketamine does, it reverses that mindset like that instantly, and really saves lives. But it can also work for people who are very depressed. And for me, it worked fantastically well. So I would recommend that anybody who has any type of depression, it's worth Googling ketamine therapy near me, and finding and just learning about it, learning more about it. It sounds a little scary, but it's not at all. You know, it's quite easy to do, and only takes one session to reverse some very serious depression, rather than going through years and years of taking different types of antidepressants, which may or may not work. So that was the first thing, the first part of the book, which is important. The next part of the book is how to get back to sleep. A lot of people with fatigue have insomnia. It's one of the side effects of long COVID.
Yeah.
And the side effects of chronic fatigue. And when you can't sleep at night, the fatigue in the day is far worse.
Yes.
You know, it just compounds the problem. So getting back to sleep was something I did a real deep dive in on how to sleep. And I've gone into all the different medications, all the different herbal supplements that can help, all the different types of food that can help you sleep, all the different gadgets on the market that can help you sleep, how to stop snoring. So that's a really important chapter, and I recommend if anybody has depression or can't sleep at night, even if you don't have fatigue, the book's really good just for that. So that's the first 2 points. And then the second part of the book is all about therapy. It's all about what to do to get over chronic fatigue syndrome. And those things include, and this one's very controversial. It's called hydrogen peroxide therapy. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Hydrogen peroxide, your doctor will not recommend you take it in any form, because it is dangerous if it's ingested, or if you drink it, it can be dangerous.
Right.
But I liken hydrogen peroxide to alcohol in terms, it very much depends on the concentration you use. So for example, if you drink 1 glass of wine, you're fine. But if you drink a bottle of moonshine at 90% alcohol, you're probably going to get into trouble, right?
Yes.
So hydrogen peroxide, similar to that in terms of it comes in a percentage concentration, and it's dangerous anywhere over 3% concentration. So you can actually buy it in 12% or 30% concentration, which I would not recommend. But you can buy it in food grade 3%, which it's generally used to wash food in. But what I do, and what I did a lot of research on this, was nebulizing. A nebulizer is a small device that turns a liquid into a vapor or a mist that you inhale through a face mask. And when you use hydrogen peroxide and you cut it down a bit to 2% with some saline solution, please bear with me on this because it's important.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah. When you cut hydrogen peroxide with saline solution, nebulize it, you only breathe in about 2 mLs or 3 mLs, which is a fraction. It's a very small amount. And what it does, it kills any and all known pathogens. So it destroys the COVID virus, destroys the flu and any common cold viruses, and potentially any other types of pathogen. And you only have to do about once a week anyway. But I haven't had a cold. I used to get a cold every 3 or 4 months. I haven't had a cold for 2 years because of hydrogen peroxide therapy. I cannot recommend it highly enough because I think it's helped save me from long COVID, because I've gotten over long COVID by using hydrogen peroxide therapy. But like everything, you need to do your own research, because you need to believe that something is going to work for you, for it to work for you. The psychological approach to any kind of drug therapy needs to be a positive approach, because you've obviously heard something called the placebo effect, which is where if you take a drug or a sugar pill that you believe is the drug, it still works on you. And there's been really interesting studies on this. Harvard University did a fascinating one a few years ago with chemotherapy, and people in this trial who did not have the actual drug, but a fake drug, their hair actually fell out because they believed that they actually took the real drug. So the
Okay.
placebo effect's really important. And in that, bearing that in mind, you need a positive mindset when you go into any kind of therapy.
Right.
There's also something called the nocebo effect, which is also very important. That's where if a doctor tells you that there are going to be side effects to, say you're going in for an operation or you're about to take a complicated drug, when he tells you the side effects, you are more likely to suffer from the side effects if they're explained to you. If you're not aware of the side effects, they're less likely to happen to you. This is another really interesting study.
Wow.
So there's actually a chapter in the book about positive thinking and how to relate to the therapies that you take on board.
Okay.
So anyway, just going back to the therapies there. So hydrogen peroxide therapy, that can help you beat long COVID. It can really reduce the risk of getting COVID. In fact, a lot of countries in Africa that are not getting the vaccine are turning to hydrogen peroxide therapy to reduce the numbers of COVID. People getting COVID. And the next important one is a very cheap vitamin D, which I'm sure you've heard of, which you get from the sun.
Yeah.
It's actually a hormone, not a vitamin. And in the sort of modern Western world where a lot of people use a lot of sunscreen and we stay indoors a lot of people don't get enough sun, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. The vitamin D is absolutely vital for getting over chronic fatigue. About 50% of people have low vitamin D levels. And the problem with that is there was a very interesting study, very recent study, that showed that people who presented to the emergency room with dangerous COVID symptoms, so these are people at risk of dying, those people who presented to the emergency room were 3.4 times, so that's 340% more likely to die from COVID if they had low vitamin D levels compared to people who had regular vitamin D levels.
Right.
That was a staggering statistic.
Yeah. Wow.
So when I did a really deep dive on vitamin D, they believe about 60,000 deaths a year are due to low vitamin D levels. The problem as well is that the recommended daily allowance is so small that it's negligible, because it used to be used to cure a disease called rickets, which is a problem, long time ago.
Yes.
And they decided that because a small dose will cure rickets, that you didn't need a higher dose. And so the dose was tiny, like 200 IUs or 300 IUs, I forget. I take 30,000 IUs a day, so you can see the difference in the jump. 30,000 IUs a day is high. I do have my blood checked about once every 3 months to make sure, A, that it's high enough, and B, that it's not too high.
Right. Okay. Seem to have lost Jason for a while there. He's frozen on the screen, but the information that he's sharing with us is very interesting, and also says the amount of work that he has done in terms of the research that he has put into to do the stuff that he has done with regards to the book. And yes, the name is Chronic Fatigue Gone, which is quite distinctive in terms of the name of the book, written by Jason Boyce. So one of the things that I have learned, I also suffered from the virus. My wife and I, we had the virus. We got infected with COVID by one of her sisters. Apparently, she had little or no symptoms, was a bit asymptomatic. And my symptoms were kind of heavy in terms of I had fever in and out for maybe a week. I had a sore throat that I just, couldn't deal with. It was pretty uncomfortable. And also in terms of the taste and the smell, that lasted for about a week as well. And that was quite disruptive. It was in the middle of the time when the Omicron strain of the virus was announced to the world, and we were aware of it taking place. And what I did was I went on a heavy dosage of vitamin C, vitamin D. I got my vitamin D naturally in the morning. So we have Jason back.
Hi, Andy. I'm so
I
sorry
was
about
just
that.
keeping them company for a little while. That's all right. It happens. The technology, we have no control over it.
I've changed to my laptop now because I wasn't sure whether it was my other computer causing a problem. So
Okay,
hopefully
that's
this will
cool.
work.
So
I
you're back.
apologize. I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I was talking about vitamin D.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Um, some people said to me, is it dangerous? Can you overdo it? And it is. You can overdo it if you're taking maybe 50 to 100,000 IU's a day. You
Mm-hmm.
can get something called hypercalcemia.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's quite rare because the body metabolizes vitamin D quite quickly. So I did a study on it to try and find out how many deaths there were a year from overdosing of vitamin D. It's virtually none. There
Okay.
was a boy, a 2-year-old boy, whose mom gave him 2.4 million IU's over 4 days. She got
Mm-hmm.
the dose wrong, and he ended up in the emergency room. But
Wow.
he survived, and he
Okay.
came out, and he survived. Like 4 days, he was completely fine again.
Yeah.
So if you compare it to a pharmaceutical drug, which kills about 200 to 300,000 people every year in the United States, it's pretty safe.
Okay.
So it's not something I believe people should worry about too much. So I take 30,000 IU's a day. My wife does too. Massive boost of energy. It's
Mm-hmm.
a it's an immunomodulator, so it can actually change your immune system to adapt to pathogens better.
Uh-huh.
So it's just a fantastic booster for the immune system. So that will be number 2 on the most important therapy, combined therapies that I've been working on. And
Okay.
then number 3 is glutathione.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of glutathione?
Yeah,
Glutathione is present. It's
I have.
present in most of the cells in the human
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
It's the best antioxidant known to man. It's called the master antioxidant.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does, it basically gets rid of all the toxins that we ingest now in the modern world. The air's not as clean as it could be. The water's not as clean as it could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our food supply, I mean, God knows what's in the food. When you look at the food nowadays, there's about 50 chemicals in everything you eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So glutathione has become really important, I believe, over the last few years, but not many people know about it.
Uh-huh.
Glutathione levels generally decline with age as well. So it's really important to boost those levels up. Like the vitamin D, people with low glutathione are more likely to die from COVID than those with regular or high glutathione levels.
Okay.
So glutathione it's probably not worth taking the pills because it doesn't do well through the digestive system because the acid tends to destroy it before it gets into the bloodstream. So again, like HP, hydrogen peroxide, I use a nebulizer and I nebulize glutathione. And what that does, it's very easy to do. Again, you just take 2 ml and put it in a nebulizer. It takes 10 minutes to breathe in. It's not unpleasant. And it just helps you clean out all those toxins. It eradicates, or it's what they call free radicals, which damage the mitochondria. The mitochondria is what gives you energy. It helps to transport the energy into the cell, and that's what gives you energy. And people with long COVID, they really struggle with a mitochondria dysfunction. And it's one of the reasons why people with long COVID are just tired all the time and can't do any physical activity. And what glutathione does, it helps to repair the mitochondria because it reduces the amount of free radicals in the body. So that's the third really great therapy. I realize I've talked here and not allowed you to ask me any questions.
And you finally realize that. But the thing about it, Jason, is that what you're saying was so very interesting, and it just goes to show the level of time and commitment that you have, invested in doing all the research that is so necessary for the information that you have gathered today. I mean, I'm
Mm.
thinking if other people, so many other people had that information, how different things could have been with regards to us better managing the effects of the COVID virus. But unfortunately, it wasn't that way. So we had to kind of learn the hard way, so to speak. And it
Yes.
was tough, and it still remains tough because a lot of nations are still trying to recover, you know. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy that you are so versed in what you're doing, and that information is vital for people out there that need it in terms of understanding how they can better prepare themselves to deal with um, the long COVID scenario as well as the chronic fatigue scenario. So we're going to go for a quick break, and we're going to come back and have further conversations with Jason with regards to his book entitled Chronic Fatigue Gone. So stay tuned, folks. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
FindRadioGuest.com, the place to click to find guests to interview for free. And if you're a radio show booker, podcaster, talk show host, or television producer, then this is the place to get podcasts and radio interviews or promote your books and products as a guest expert sponsor. FindRadioGuest.com. Check it out. Hi, people. This is a special invitation for you to join our community. Yes, we're inviting you to join our community for 2022. What's in store? Well, what we want is your feedback on our content and our guests, but more so on what you need to be inspired and transformed from your current condition to one of happiness, health, and prosperity. So drop us a line and reach out. Help us to better help you achieve your goals. So, people, inbox me at www.facebook.com/mddreamer/. That's www.facebook.com/mddreamer/. Or send me an email at lovebitsa@gmail.com. That's lovebitsa@gmail.com. We love hearing from you as we build our partnership in growth and development, and we look forward to your communicating. Help us to help you to live a better life in personal growth and development from Andy's Personal Development. We love you. We look forward to hearing from you. See you soon. Bye for now.
So we are back live in the breakout room on Andy's Personal Development with author, the man of the moment, Jason Boyce. Jason, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people who are experiencing early signs of chronic fatigue? I believe it's a syndrome. What should they
Mhm.
look for, and how they can prevent further?
Okay, you've frozen, Andy, but if you can hear me, yeah, if you're presenting with
Deterioration, so that go ahead.
oh, sorry, you've broken up there. Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So if you believe you may be having early signs of chronic fatigue, do something about it. So I would ditch your primary care doctor, and I would go and find a naturopath
Mm-hmm.
or a functional medicine doctor or a chronic fatigue specialist.
Okay.
So I do that. I would buy the book Chronic Fatigue Gone because that's going to help you.
All right.
And then I would do those 3 therapies as soon as possible, because those 3 therapies can ward off the chronic fatigue. But what I would say is take action. Don't sit back and just let it happen. You need to do something about it, because the longer you leave it, the longer you leave something like that, the harder it is to get over it. So, and you can, I mean, these 3 therapies are relatively cheap, maybe apart from glutathione, which you will need to get from a naturopath. Vitamin D you can buy on Amazon very cheaply.
Yeah.
Hydrogen peroxide is super cheap. I buy it on Amazon 3% food grade. It's like $15, and it lasts me 18 months to 2 years for one bottle. So as long as you keep it in the fridge, that is.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So also the other thing I'd recommend is have cold showers or cold baths, or ice baths are excellent if you can do it, because ice baths reduce inflammation, and reducing inflammation is one of the key problems that manifests with people with chronic fatigue, especially the brain. Inflammation of the brain is one of the causes of chronic fatigue syndrome.
Okay.
So if you can have a cold shower a couple of times a day, or have a nice bath, that will help with chronic fatigue. It will give you a boost of energy. So do those things, and take action. Don't just lie in bed all day. Do rest, though. Obviously, it's important to rest and not overdo it. Obviously, working hard and trying to push through chronic fatigue will definitely make it worse. So don't do that, and don't run marathons or try and do too much exercise, because that will certainly make it worse and can potentially be very dangerous. So take it easy, but try and take positive affirmative action to beat it.
Okay. Great. As you mentioned that, I'm thinking that you had a period of 15 years where you really struggled. And I'm thinking that for most people, after 15 years, you'd probably tell yourself, well, I might as well give up. But you didn't, Jason. You pursued, you studied, you researched, and you used all those challenges as an opportunity to do something positive. But not only that, you recorded it. Not only that, you're sharing it with people who are in a similar position, and you're bringing value to people's life. So the question in the back of my mind is, what are some of the life lessons, valuable lessons, virtuous lessons that you would have learned as a result of going through that, but still looking at it from a positive manner, in which you did the research, you published the book, and now you're willing to just share the information with people?
Yeah, that's a good question. You've got to turn, if you can, try and turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah.
I've realized looking back that I've been doing that for most of my life.
Okay.
So I was kind of, there's always an opportunity to do something positive, even if it feels like the worst thing that could ever happen to you.
Okay.
I guess as well, I mean, I was forced really to do this because I didn't want to die at a young age. I've got 2 kids and a wife. And I guess that really forced my hand to push forward and do this.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that I had a very supporting, loving relationship. My wife was very supportive. So that was important,
Right. Yes.
But there's a whole chapter in that book about positivity, how to turn a negative into a positive action, how to create a positive habit, because creating a positive habit can change your life around.
Right.
So you've got to try and look at something from a different angle. So, when I was tired and lying in bed, I realized that I had a lot of free time. I mean, it was forced free time. I didn't want the free time. But I thought, well, I have an opportunity here to learn about the disease and then see if I can, figure it out myself and find a cure for it.
Yeah.
I guess the opportunity was the time, right? So the opportunity was the time to learn about it, rather than just switch off and do what some people do. So I decided to go that route. So I think anybody, no matter what befalls you in life, it is possible to turn it into a positive.
All right.
Just one thing on happiness, actually, because
Sure.
I looked at a study on happiness. Really important point. There was a study done on, I think it was 12 people who won the lottery, and 12 people who had recently become paraplegic due to a car accident.
Okay.
And over 6 months, the people who won the lottery were much happier than the people, who are now in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But over time, as time ran on, it was found that the baseline happiness of the lottery winners and the unfortunate people in wheelchairs, it went back to a baseline of happiness. They were both as happy as each other after a 6-month period.
Oh, right.
And I found that really interesting, because you would have think that having something that terrible happen to you, it would just completely destroy your life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It doesn't. You actually get used to something, and your level of happiness actually rises as the challenges come, and then you beat the challenges, and you feel good because you've beaten the challenge, and that gives you a lift in energy and a lift in, serotonin in the brain. And that was a really important study. I was really interested to know that. So, so I think that's, bear that in mind. If something horrible happens to you, that you will get over it, and time is a great healer, and your happiness levels will get back to where they were, generally speaking.
I believe that too. Thanks for sharing. So we have come to the end of this very intriguing and inspiring episode with Jason Boyce in the breakout room. So we're going to give him some time now just to share with us how we can get his book, if he does any personal counseling or therapeutical advice for people and so on, stuff like that. Maybe even what he does in real estate. I don't know. The time is yours, Jason. You just share your social handles and how people can get in touch with you, your book and stuff. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is available just on one source. It's now available on Amazon. It's free for anybody with the Kindle Unlimited. It's $2.99 for the Kindle, and the paperback is $14.99. So it's pretty inexpensive. I kept it as inexpensive as I possibly could. The website, I have a website called chronicfatiguegone.com. That's chronicfatiguegone.com. Anybody can click on a link there and just email me, and I will respond to an email if anybody wants to discuss anything with me. There's also a bunch of blogs on there about the therapies that I've discussed today, and all sorts of other things that will help beat chronic fatigue. So it's simply that. So you can find me. The best way to reach me is through the website. So it's chronicfatigue.com. There's also a link in the chronicfatigue.com to buy the book on Amazon directly, or you can just search on Amazon for Chronic Fatigue Gone. So that's it. So please buy the book. Contact me, let me know what you think. And thanks a lot. Thanks, Andy, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for being here with us. You shared some very vital information that I'm sure would make a difference to a whole lot of people. I'm wondering, how did I not know this before? Yeah, so maybe it's just a matter of timing, maybe it's just a matter of coincidence, I don't know. But we thank you so much for being on the show, and as we leave, we want to encourage people to be happy, be healthy, and see prosperity in this life. And even if something bad happens to you, as Jason reminded us, in time, things can get better and will get better. You just have to have the belief and the mindset that that's going to happen over a certain extended period of time. I guess you've got to find a way to enjoy the process and just sort of leverage on the time that is available to you. So we thank Jason for his company and for the information he shared, and we wish him every success going forward, especially with his book entitled Chronic Fatigue Gone. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, along with Jason Boyce. So long, folks. Godspeed. God bless. Namaste. Take care now.